Hey guys, so for this video, I want to go back in time a little and cover the best Fortnite player from each season. At the time I'm making this video, Season 11 is literally tomorrow. So what better way to say goodbye to this chapter of Fortnite than by recapping each season and its best player. Now, before you flame me about my choices, just know this is mainly for entertainment purposes. It's really hard to declare one singular best player in a battle royale, and it's even harder not to put one player for multiple seasons. Still, I'm gonna do my best to choose a different player for each and give concrete reasoning behind who I choose. So with that being said, let's start all the way back in Season 1 with a player not many of you know of, MrGrimmmz. MrGrimmmz is a Twitch streamer and YouTuber that absolutely dominated in Fortnite at its infancy. This was way back when nobody knew how to build or edit, and I mean nobody. People played Fortnite like every other battle royale at the time, meaning the skill gap was primarily aiming and positioning. Those just happen to be the two things MrGrimmmz excels at. Coming into Fortnite, MrGrimmmz's overall gun skill and game sense was way ahead of his time. The man was dropping 20 bombs in November of 2017. For some reference, most people, including me, hadn't even started playing yet. Meanwhile, MrGrimmmz was out there wiping squads and putting on an absolute clinic. Unfortunately though, MrGrimmmz was never that big of a fan of building, and he really disliked all the bugs in the game. As time progressed, he eventually stopped playing completely, only returning once every few months to check in. Still, his dominance during Season 1 will never be forgotten. Moving on to Season 2, and I think we can all agree who the best player was. TSM Myth. Myth was another player that was truly ahead of his time. Rather than relying on his raw aim and gun skill, Myth started to master building and editing before it became the norm. This was around the time when the average Season 2 player was just beginning to build walls and ramps for protection. Myth, on the other hand, was using his build strategically, getting high ground over people, making smart edits, and outplaying people without even shooting at them. Fundamental techniques like ramp rushes and scissor ramps that we all take for granted, Myth actually invented. Maybe his most infamous strategy though was just sitting and camping in a 1x1. This passive playstyle allowed him to consistently win solo games and hold the #1 spot on the leaderboard for wins. Myth did try his hand at competitive in later seasons, but he slowly gravitated towards focusing on content. Regardless, Myth will always be known as a pioneer of building and for helping to establish the competitive Fortnite scene. Next up is Ninja, who I think deserves the title of best Fortnite player in Season 3. Ninja was one of the first players to have the full package in terms of skill. His aim was top tier, his building was amazing at the time, and he was incredibly smart in game. What really set him apart though was his ability to slay out and drop high kill games with ease. I kid you not, he would push everyone he saw and would win every single fight he got into. This is a big reason he got so big on Twitch. Simply put, he did not need to sit in a tower like Myth did to farm wins. He was good enough to play aggressive and still come out on top. The craziest part is that Ninja continues to be a top player to this day. Yeah, he doesn't focus on competitive, but he was 2 points off qualifying for the World Cup. And I guarantee if he put the time in to practice and to play competitively, he could easily be the best player in the world. Now, Season 4 is where it starts to get a little harder to choose the best player. In my opinion though, it goes to another TSM member, Hamlinz. Reason being is Hamlinz mechanics were bar none at the time, except for maybe Mongraal, but we're saving him for later. Season 4 was when people started to focus more on the speed and quickness of their builds. As a result, build battles became popular and the meta. Hamlinz was one of the fastest and smoothest builders during this time, so for obvious reasons, he excelled. On top of that, Season 4 was also when double pumping was a thing, and Hamlinz was by far one of the best double pumpers around. Those two skills combined made Hamlinz one of the scariest players to fight against, and helped him win solo scrims against other pros like Jowmock, Chap, and Myth. So even though Hamlinz fell to the content creating dark side, I cannot think of a more talented and skilled player back in Season 4. Halfway through, and Season 5 is another difficult choice. But for the sake of having a different best player each season, my choice is Ghost Bizzle. When it comes to competitive Fortnite, Bizzle is one of the all-time greats. He found a ton of success during the summer skirmish, which of course took place in Season 5. During those 10 weeks, Bizzle was extremely consistent and placed second in 3 of them. One of them happened to be the first ever Epic sponsored LAN event, PAX West, where Bizzle won $180,000. That launched him up the ranks and made him the highest earning pro Fortnite player at the time. The main reason I think he was the best during that time though, was because this was the first real test for competitive players. No longer was skill based on pub stomping or speculation. It all came down to who could perform the best in tournaments, and Bizzle undoubtedly did that. So, while he hasn't made too much noise recently, his game sense alone will help him stay at the top for years to come. On to Season 6, and you're probably wondering, where the hell is Tfue? Well, here he is. Tfue, in many people's minds, is the one true GOAT. He's been a top player since the beginning of the game, and was the first person to truly outplay Ninja back in Season 3. However, the fall skirmish in Season 6 was when we really saw Tfue's full potential. Tfue won the Week 2 and Week 4 solo competitions, which were arguably the 2 hardest solo tournaments back then. On top of that, Tfue and Cloaksy won the Week 6 LAN event at TwitchCon and brought home over $500,000. That kind of consistency in solos, duos, online, and on LAN is ridiculous for any game, let alone Fortnite. So it's hard to deny how good he is when he's on his A game. To this day, Tfue remains a top competitor and puts up a strong argument for the best player of all time. Season 7 is a toss-up between Zexro and MrSavage, but since I haven't been fair to my EU brethren, let's focus on MrSavage. Season 7 MrSavage was before he used a face cam, and before he was actually allowed to play in epic tournaments. Since he was only 14, he couldn't get invited to events. The only thing he could compete in was the open qualifiers. In the Winter Royale open qualifier, Savage placed second in the hardest region in the world, and in the EU pop-up cups, he consistently placed at the top, including when he set the record for the most points in a solo pop-up cup. Savage's success came from a combination of his insanely fast mechanics and his ability to consistently outplay people. Every game I watched him play in seemed like a highlight reel because of how smart and 200 IQ he was. Luckily for Savage, the age restriction on competitive Fortnite was lifted months later, and he has since gone on to win nearly $200,000 in prize money. For Season 8, I'm gonna have to go with Misfits Clix. Clix was pretty much a nobody at the beginning of Season 8. He was signed by Misfits, but nobody really knew a lot about him. That was until the World Cup qualifiers came around, where Clix qualified for the World Cup 5 separate times, including 3 times for solos and 2 times for duos. The reason I think he was so good was because of how far ahead he was of the meta. Clix knew how important box fighting and turtling was becoming, so Clix went out and focused on W keying and box fighting. When you give 0 ping to the best box fighter in the world and put him up against players who are not used to getting W keyed, well, Season 8 Clix is what you get. Moving on to more recent times, and there's a clear winner for Season 9, SEN Bugha. Bugha flew under most people's radars for a majority of Season 9. We got a little glimpse of his true potential after he placed first in the first week of the World Cup qualifiers. Still though, most people labeled him as a 0 ping warrior and thought he'd choke on LAN. Bugha, like the animal he is, actually did the opposite and won the solo World Cup by 26 points. He nearly doubled second place in points in the most stacked and competitive event ever. That World Cup win netted him $3 million and made him the highest earning Fortnite player in the world. If somehow that's not enough to sell you on how good he is, just go and watch the kid. He's easily one of the fastest builders and editors in the world. In my mind, there's absolutely nobody you can put over him for Season 9. Season 10 though, there's one player who I've been purposely leaving out until now. Tfue's Mongraal. Mongraal is another contender for the best player of all time. He's got aimbot-like aim, his building and editing are faster than any creative warriors, and he is always performing well in tournaments. We saw that especially in Season X with the Fortnite Championship Series. Mongraal's trio won 3 weeks, placed second in another 2 weeks, and won 2 cash cups as well. They didn't do too well in the finals, but to most people, Mongraal and his trio were the scariest to face. So as long as Mongraal keeps grinding and putting in as many hours as he does, I honestly think he will be the greatest Fortnite player ever. Overall, those were who I think are the best players from each season. Remember boys, this was made for entertainment purposes. I didn't want to put Mongraal as the best player for like 6 seasons in a row, so I tried to do a different player for each. Please don't roast me too hard. But if you enjoyed the video, do be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and to turn on post notifications. Thank you to everyone using code Jerian. Make sure you guys let me know if you use my code on the new battle pass. This way I can shout you out in the next video. Otherwise, that's it from me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.